and I am going to introduce Irina. And I want to tell you a little bit about Irina because she is a graduate of our program, which is amazing. And I'm going to spotlight her there. And Irina, also, she has this perfect blend of both the science of creativity, having her master's, and this artistic expertise and experience, which I love. You know, workshops, training, photography, because there's a great visual sense there. But I also wanted to share one other thing that I poked around to pull up for everyone to see today, which I thought was kind of fun. Over 1,000 downloads of her master's project from 2012, which was about suspended judgment. So it is our pleasure today from Barcelona to introduce Irina.
Thank you very much, Susan. It's really curious that you decided to check my master project because my presentation has a lot to do with it.
I know, which is great. It's just serendipity.
Yes. So I want to present to you today my view on the relationship between meditation and creativity. But before I share my screen with you, I would like to ask you one question. Please put in the chat those of you who have any experience with meditation, type 1, and those who don't have any experience, type 0. And we have experienced meditators, some newbies too. And if by curiosity, if those who has experience with meditation don't mind to share, please share for how long have you been meditating, how regularly do you do that, and what kind of meditation do you practice? And okay, wow. Okay, we have a very experienced meditators here today. Okay, so let's see if by the end of my presentation, those of you with experience, let's see if we agree or disagree on how meditation can influence one's creativity. And for those of you who haven't tried it yet, let's see if I give you reasons to begin this adventure. And now I will try to share my screen. Okay. So can you see it?
Got it.
Great. Okay. So talking about experience, I personally have been involved in all kinds of creative activities for my whole life. I did a lot of theater. I studied music and fine arts. This is me, as you could guess. I worked as a professional photographer and videographer. I have a master's degree in creativity from our wonderful Center for Applied Imagination. I worked as a creative thinking facilitator, but now my practice is focused more on individual coaching. And I also have been meditating for almost 20 years, and I'm a meditation and mindfulness instructor. The things I will talk about today are based mainly on my personal experience with the creative process as a creator and as a professional who works with creative processes of others, and as a meditation practitioner. So why meditation and creativity? Why do I think it's important? Doesn't it seem to you that the world is a mess right now? I strongly believe that if we want to live in a more creative world, then the only solution we have is to become more aware of ourselves. And so let's start with becoming aware of the very basics of how creativity works. This is our perception of reality, how we see things. Everything what we know about the world is inside this box. what defines the limits of the box are our judgments. The value resides inside the box because only here we have all the knowledge we need to be able to identify what has value and what doesn't. But somehow we want to connect this value to the novelty that is outside the box. And for that to happen, we need to suspend our judgments, and only then we can explore the novelty at divergence phase and then connect it to the value at convergence phase. And thus we fixed new limits of our knowledge of the world that stops being a box, at least for a while. So suspending judgment is the key to any creative process. The problem is, in the vast majority, we're not aware of our judgments. They're subconscious and they're automatic. And you can't suspend what you're not aware of. It is very easy to say, we don't evaluate ideas while we're exploring them. We will evaluate them later. But what actually happens in people's heads is an entirely different story. I'm sure that those of you who work with facilitating creativity have come across situations when, despite all our fun and diversion and ideation techniques and prompts and warm-ups, where comes the moment when someone says, I don't have ideas. I don't know what to say. Nothing comes to my mind. But when you start digging into what is actually going on, you always, in the end, find this voice at the background of the person's mind that keeps saying, shh, don't say this. This is stupid. No, this won't work. This is not good enough. The person keeps evaluating ideas without being aware of it. The only thing that is apparent at the surface of the consciousness is nothing comes to my mind. You can't suspend what you're not aware of. And here is when meditation comes into play. But first we need to define meditation, because what we call with this word is actually a bunch of rather disparate techniques and practices that come from different traditions and origins, pursue different goals, and work based on different principles. And it creates huge confusion in the minds because it's all called meditation. I am sure that we talk about meditation now with all experiences you all have. And I say A, you understand B. So to help us to navigate through this sea of confusion, I propose us to use the following classification, because I think it gives us a good framework for my analysis. So we can divide all meditational techniques into three groups: attentional practices, constructive practices, and deconstructive practices. Attentional meditations, as it follows from the term, work with attention. Constructive practices aim at cultivating certain qualities in a meditator. And deconstructive meditations work on the deconstruction of one's perception of reality. In my discourse, I will focus only on attentional and constructive meditations. And if we return our attention to the problem of the judgment we can't suspend because we're not aware of it, then attentional meditations will be the key to the solution. Because although it is still a very diverse group, all attentional meditations share the same principle. You choose a focal point, you direct your attention to the focal point, you get distracted, you become aware of your distraction, and you return your attention to the focal point. And the most important moment here is when you get distracted and you become aware of it, because this is when you train your muscle of awareness. And the more you train it, the higher chances of becoming aware of your judgments will be. Then another common element all attentional meditations share is the attitude of no judgment. Because basically what you're taught is when you get distracted and you become aware of your distraction, you don't say to yourself, why have I got distracted again? That of me. No, you say, I've got distracted. Curious. It is okay. And then you return your attention to the focal point And then you get distracted again. And so again, you say, how interesting, I got distracted. It is okay. What are we training here? Right, we are training suspending judgment. So basically, with attentional meditations, you train two skills that are necessary for your creativity: becoming aware of your judgments and being able to suspend them. Problem solved. But there is much more to it. All attentional meditations, as many of you might know, are also divided into two very big and different groups: focused attention meditations and mindfulness meditations. Focused attention meditations invite the practitioner to concentrate the attention on one focal point, whereas mindfulness is about observing what emerges in the field of awareness. And we are interested here in mindfulness meditations. Why is that? Because mindfulness, basically, what it teaches you is to notice things. Do you know any better skill for your creativity than being able to notice what you haven't noticed before and suspend judgment at the same time? And then there is a self-regulation effect. It is well known that one of the benefits that shows up at the early stage of the mindfulness meditation practice is relaxation and stress reduction. And it is not surprised that people use meditation as a self-regulation tool. Why is it important for our creativity? Because our body remembers our experiences. All our stress, our fears, failures, rejections, our traumas, all our judgments and beliefs are stored in our soma. We can't separate the mind from the body. So this relaxation of bodily tensions may be crucial for the flexibility and the fluidity of the mind. You can't open your mind if your body is rigid. But the same as with judgments, you can't relax your body if you're not aware of your tensions. So this mindfulness of your bodily experience may play a huge role in your creative process. And so first you learn to observe your experience part by part. You observe sounds, you observe your breath, you observe sensations in a particular part of your body, etc. And then slowly, practice by practice, you learn to amplify the area of your awareness so it would include more and more details of your experience simultaneously. And thus you get to open monitoring. In open monitoring, you don't have any reference whatsoever regarding where you're supposed to direct your attention to, because you observe everything. You're constantly responding to the question, what else am I aware of? Imagine a sort of vigilance guy with all these screens connected to security cameras, and these screens show everything what is going on in your experience, in every part of your experience at any particular moment. And this vigilance guide, who is an inner observer you're cultivating with the practice of open monitoring, he has to observe all of it at the same time. And practicing it, this is how you get the chance to get to costless cessation. Because if you want to learn to sustain in the same mental field two polarities until new relationship emerges between them, try first to sustain in the same field of awareness two different sensations simultaneously. And learning this is about a state. And it is not a state of mind. It is a state of the whole being. It is a state in which you don't just iterate between divergence and convergence linearly, but you flow between them, you dance with them. It is a state in which you can connect simultaneously the unlimited imagination with the limits of reason. But how do we get to this state? Here is when constructive meditations come to our aid. You probably have heard or have experienced Buddhist metta or loving kindness meditation. I think it is one of the most famous constructive practices. In it, a practitioner is invited to focus on the feeling of love. First, this love is directed towards oneself and then towards others. And this practice may be very important for the work with the inner critic. We have established that what separates value from novelty are our judgments that need to be suspended for creativity to occur. But the inner critic is not just a cognitive construct you can suspend. It is an integral part of yourself, deeply ingrained in your psyche. Nowadays, it is very popular to talk about how to learn to say no to the inner critic, how to stop listening to this voice. I personally believe that this approach is counterproductive because your inner critic has a mission, and an important one, and that is to protect you. It does a horrendous job, I know, but otherwise things wouldn't be interesting, would they? The truth is that trying to stop listening to your inner critic is the same as like trying to suppress or ignore negative emotions. It never ends well. Instead of learning how to resist this part of yourself, you need to learn how to enter into a dialogue with your inner critic. But how to do it? It is one of the most traumatizing voices you have heard in your life. So it's terrifying. And this is why you need first to pump yourself with the feeling of love with the help of compassion meditations. And when this feeling of love gives you enough support to sustain your encounter with your critical side, you direct this love to the inner critic. And then magic happens. I have experienced it time and again, working with others and with myself. When you enter into this generative dialogue with a part of yourself that creates problems and obstacles for you, behind these obstacles, there is always a great resource. But it's not only about feeling of love. With the help of constructive meditations, you can learn to cultivate other qualities in states you might need in your creative process, like curiosity, playfulness, or focus and determination. And then, in the same way as you have learned to sustain in one field of awareness two different sensations simultaneously, or to hold in one mental space two different concepts, so new connection might emerge between them. In the same way, you can sustain in one experiential field two different experiences that might seem contradictory to each other, like, for example, flowing freely in an open space of your imagination while maintaining contact with your focus and reason. And this is the state of the creative flow. And you can get to the state with the help of the skills that meditation teaches you. Becoming aware of your judgments, suspending your judgments, noticing new things, self-regulating so you could connect your mind and your body, cultivating qualities and states that help you be more generative, and sustaining in one field of consciousness multiple elements so new relationships might emerge between them. And this is creativity. And this is my view and on the relationship between meditation and creativity. Thank you for listening. I leave you here my website. There you can find all my social networks. And if anyone has curiosity to continue this discussion, I am always open for dialogue. Or let's have discussion now. So thank you again for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been wonderful to continue to learn from Bernie and to really think about understanding the importance of questioning and wondering and reconnecting. It's been a long time, Irina, since we've had an opportunity and to be able to flex the muscle of awareness. I love that. I love that. So we have a few minutes here where we can have some insights, questions. And Irina, if you would put your contact information in the chat, that will help. And people want to know what a good email would be. And thanking both of you for a good presentation. So as we think about, wow, this whole entire conference, if you have a question for one of our presenters, or insights into either of these presentations and the conference itself, we will open it to our group.
I have a question for Bernie.
Kimberly.
So Bernie, you know, now it sounds like you've learned kind of what the the CPS, creative problem solving methodology. How closely would you say that mirrors to what you used in fashion in terms of kind of teaching students how to create and produce a product through whatever the process that y'all used?
Well, what was interesting when I was teaching was I realized that they weren't as creative as they could be. So what I needed to do is disrupt their whole process. And they told me it was like I pulled the rug out from underneath their feet. And it was because I told them, usually within fashion, you start with a sketch and you draw the sketch, and then you start working around and developing the product. And what I found was that I could push them a little bit further to explore and to try things when they didn't start with a sketch. And I would just say, the fabric will tell you what to do. The fabric will tell you the process. Just make me a dress. And I removed all requirements. And so what I was doing was giving them freedom to explore. And they started creating these unusual dresses. And it was an awesome experience for teaching and understanding that I could push them a little bit further.
Thanks, Bernie. Thanks, Kimberly.
Thank you.
All right, our next speaker, go ahead, Marjana.
Thank you. So my question goes to Irina, and I'm curious, when working with community clients groups or beneficiaries that are dealing with real trauma, whether if it's conflict, abuse, etc., how do we use the power of meditation when these folks say, like, we don't have the time to meditate, like, instead of they look at it like a luxury, which it is. And I personally feel like that I have told myself, like, the time when I feel like I don't have time to meditate, I need it most. But then again, if it's like, say, you're working with a single mom who works 2 jobs and kids to feed and job, all of that, and really just lack of that time, but then yet they would benefit so greatly from this process. What advice do you have, and how could we work creatively to sort of, invite this, or what are the insights about this?
Yeah, the time is usually the common concern that stops people from starting meditating. Regarding the group you're talking about, I think, and I would love to give more expertly answer, but because these kind of groups you're talking about, this is my great interest to be able to work with them, and I haven't yet because it terrifies me, and I'm taking the training on trauma now. But what can help them most is mindfulness meditations, and most of the mindfulness practices can be done in an informal manner. You don't have to sit and dedicate time to meditate. It's just the matter of directing your attention. Just stop, observe what do you feel now when you're sitting on your chair, what your hands feel when they're touching what they're touching. Just do 3 breaths and notice what happens with you when you breathe. Just when you take in the bus to go to your walk, just listen to the sounds and then pay attention to your feet and then to how your clothes touches your skin and what else do you feel? What else are you aware of?
Mhm.
And
Thank you.
Thanks. And sounds like some really amazing training that you'll be involved in coming up. And certainly something that training is necessary, and some things obviously go to people who have expertise in other areas when it comes to trauma. Yes, Michelle.
Sorry about that. Couldn't unmute there. Bernie, I have a question. So where was your mind start when you started? And then where was your mindset when well, I don't even want to use mindset. What did you learn from how you operated initially to where you ended up after you studied Leonardo? Like, how did you absorb? It's sort of like Irina is talking about how you become in a generative state. It's like you must have stepped into his world totally.
I did, and I realized that I had the same insatiable appetite to understand how things work and how I was comfortable with going the arts and the science, exploring things that I'd never even dreamed of doing before. So I understood his mindset and his creative thinking principles, and I try and mimic some of what he's doing. And what was interesting was, that now him and I have this connection between biomimicry and some other discipline. And I never would have put myself there before. But I went to this amazing workshop that our center and department had on biomimicry, and I loved it. I was fascinated with it.
And took it from there, which is great.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So if you think about, and I may put my presenters on the spot, something that you've learned over the course of the conference, something that sticks with you and that you think about as important or insightful or something you can apply. And anyone can jump in. I don't know. What did you find insightful or something of interest?
well, my main insight or my main takeaway from this conference is that sharing is loving. Because I really have found a lot of information and insights in different presentations for the current projects I'm working on. So this was exactly the information I needed. So, great.
Wow, that's excellent. Yeah, because, if you think about, I have a lot of University of Virgin Island doctoral students coming to the conference. And they really looked ahead of time to say, no matter what the topic is, where's my connection? You know, where are things for particularly their dissertation, which was very, very insightful. And we're hearing the same thing from people and the network that people, you know, beyond who you normally talk to, beyond the people that you graduated through Buffalo State with, to new people who in our first time in our community, who will be, you know, who become part of our community. Because, you know, in the field of creativity, we all are pretty devoted to growing it and expanding it in a way and sharing. So I think your point about sharing is so important. We don't hold our concepts tight. We're here to give and to get back. Thanks. Anyone else like to share?
Sue, this is Kim. I'd just like to add that I think the beauty of the umbrella of creativity is demonstrated in this conference in that you have so many presenters where creativity speaks to them in different ways, but it still has this beautiful thread of creativity woven into it, even though there's this kind of interdisciplinary touch points. And I just think that just makes it interesting and fascinating, and it's just like a beautiful kind of connector for the conference and just myself personally. So,
and one of the things when we created this is we weren't looking at an introductory conference. I know I went to a lot of conferences over my career, and after a while, it was more about the networking because so many of the sessions were introductory, and I was looking for something else. And so in this, I love the way Ronnie this morning, she said, now you already know this, let me take it from here where we can expand our thinking as people who have a background in the field. So Creativity Expert Exchange was developed with that in mind. Let's not start at 0, let's start at 8. Yes, very good. And we have some things in the chat as well. So we will stay around if anyone has any more questions. We appreciate you coming to the conference. We appreciate your ability to make those connections and continue them. A lot of LinkedIn connections have been made. I'm really bad about LinkedIn. And so yesterday I was like, oh, people want to connect. Okay, they must be from the conference, because I always try and figure out who it is and, you know, what the connection is. So this has been great. And thank you all for being a part of it. So we will say goodbye to our formal part.